Welcome to Sikhcast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Introducing Paigham-i-Goya, Expression of Love, new translations of a selection of ghazals from Bhai Nand Lal Goya. Today's podcast begins with the recitation of Bhai Nand Lal's ghazal in Persian, followed by a new English transcreation, the result of a unique collaboration between Dr. Fatima Fayyaz and Dr. Nadhra Khan of Lahore University of Management Sciences, Damanpreet Singh, writer and graduate student, and Inni Kaur of SikhRI, followed by a discussion between Daman and Inni about the beauty of the ghazal and the transcreation process.
بس که ما را هست با تو ارتباط، از قدوم توست در عالم نشاط. فرش کردم در قدوم راه تو، دیده و دل را که بوده در بساط. بر فقیران خدا رحمی بکن، تا در این دنیا بیابی انبساط. دایما دل را به سوی حق بیار، تا به آسان بگذری زین پل صراط. نیست آسوده کسی در زیر چرخ، بگذری گویا از این کهنه رباط.
Such is our deep connection with you, that only with your arrival there is exuberance in the world. In your pathway, I have spread out my eyes and my heart, the only worthy possessions I could offer. Have some compassion for the divine's fakirs, so that you may find bliss in this world. Direct your heart towards the divine at all times, so you can cross the bridge of Sirat with ease. No one is at ease under the ever-turning sky, so Goya, just move through this worn perpetual caravanserai.
Guru Fateh, this is Inni Kaur in conversation with Damanpreet Singh again on another ghazal, ghazal number 44 from the Bhai Nand Lal collection, Divan-i-Goya. Welcome, Daman. I am so looking forward to having this conversation with you today on this particular ghazal. This was challenging for me, but before I get there and talk about the challenging part of the ghazal, let's begin with what we do, or mostly every ghazal, is the repeated word. It's art, right? And it comes at the end of every line. So we need your expertise. Help us through that. What does that mean?
Yeah, so the repeated rhyme in this ghazal, as you're saying, is the long A and T. In this case, in the past, we've seen like a repeated word or a repeated phrase at this end of each couplet. In this case, it's simply the rhyme scheme. So each word in the second line of a couplet will end with the sound at, the long A and the T sound. So here it's serving the function of maintaining the rhyme, as always is the case in a ghazal, but it's not a word on its own that means anything in particular.
So it's interesting for our readers that when they listen to the Farsi, the one in Farsi, they'll be able to appreciate the rhyme. You know, I do enjoy listening to the Farsi one. Yeah, after even when I'm translating and now preparing for the podcast, I'd like to listen to that rhythm. And in this one, it was quite special. I enjoyed that. So, this ghazal, which I said was challenging, but it was challenging at multiple levels. While I totally get it, Daman, and I understand that each couplet, each share is complete on its own. It's a universe in itself. It's not connected to anything, it's really hard for my mind to accept that because I'm so used to reading poetry which builds on and there's a connection. So this one was quite a bit of a mind stretch to figure out how are the couplets related, what do they mean, what is that holding thing? I couldn't get that. And then I particularly had a difficult time with the last couplet. Now, I think I'll speak to that when we get there. But did you find anything challenging in this particular ghazal?
Yeah, as you're saying, we're so used to, kind of trying to come up with a coherent meaning of a poem. And it both helps to know that each couplet is like a thought unto itself and is meant to be a thought unto itself, and then also sometimes makes it like really frustrating because it's so short, and sometimes you're kind of like left with lots of, or at least I'm left with lots of questions, and I'm wondering like, what does that couplet mean? And then I'm trying to connect it to other things, and then I don't know. I think that's something that's interesting here that wouldn't necessarily be apparent for the listeners who haven't seen the text on a screen or printed. That makes the interpretation a little bit more complicated, is that there's two ways in which Bhai Nand Lal is using the pronoun you to address either the beloved. So we'll see when we discuss the first couplet, for example, that Bhai Nand Lal is referring directly to the divine by saying you to refer to the divine. And then in future couplets, which we'll get to as we proceed in our discussion, it seems that he's either referring to like directly to the reader, or he's perhaps referring to himself. And I think I'd be curious to hear what your interpretation has been in the couple of couplets where we saw that. Because of course, when one is listening, it might seem that the you is always referring to the divine. For example, in the written, we've tried to make that distinction by capitalizing the Y when Nand Lal is referring to the divine, and then having the Y in lowercase when he is referring to anyone else but the divine, which makes it a little bit clearer when one is reading on the screen or on the page. But it certainly makes the interpretation a little bit more difficult.
Great point. I totally missed that. Otherwise, the readers would have had a difficult time figuring that one out. So the first couplet is, such is our deep connection with you, that only with your arrival there is exuberance in the world. While I understand the use of R and how Goya is including all divine lovers in the opening, it made the first couplet for me a little less intimate. I think if I could, or if I would, or if I, could take the liberty of translating it as such as my deep longing connection with you, that would have been, more close, was a lot more intimate than are. I understand the openness and everything. And in the second line, I know the word is that only with your arrival, but I think in Farsi the word is footsteps, right? And I understand. I don't know whether your arrival and your footsteps, if there's a difference. But for me, the meaning conveyed by footsteps, feet, is very powerful. It's very visual and symbolic of something about footsteps. For me, it has a much deeper meaning. I understand why we chose arrival, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on, arrival versus footsteps and what you think about it.
Yeah. On the first point, in terms of the use of the word our instead of my, which was a discussion that we had as a team when we were doing the translation. And I think it would be entirely fair. We would have to ask Fatima, who's an expert on Persian literature, to kind of confirm this. But I think it would be entirely fair to use my instead of our, because of the conventions of Persian poetry. So I think there is some ambiguity here, which might come through in the original Persian that doesn't happen in the English because of the way in which kind of pronouns work in English. Of course, the question is, is it both? And then if it is our, is it, as you're saying, including kind of all lovers of the divine? So I think that's a really good point. And I think that's another one of those moments where we made a choice to be as literal as possible, because the pronoun literally that's used in the Persian is the plural. But is it actually more effective, or how is it changing the meaning if we were actually to use the singular? I think is a question that listeners should, can play around with to see if the couplet resonates differently depending on the pronoun. And yeah, with your arrival, the word that's in the original Persian does connote more clearly that this is about the entry via footsteps. It is a very powerful image, and we struggled to figure out how we would write that, if I remember correctly, using one word in English, because only with your footsteps doesn't quite necessarily convey the image of an entry or an arrival in the English. Something that I think, as an aside from that, that's really something that I love about this couplet is that it does kind of remind me of a past ghazal we've done, where we saw the imagery of spring, and the arrival of the beloved is equivalent to the blooming of flowers in springtime. And I think there was a particular line about the garden of paradise. The world becomes the garden of paradise, akin to the garden of paradise when the beloved arrives. And there too, we saw this imagery of the footsteps of the beloved kind of entering. And exuberance for me, the word in Persian could have also been translated as kind of cheerfulness. There's a sense of joy, there's a sense of happiness, but there's also this sense of life and liveliness. And the word exuberance is perhaps not perfect, but we tried to convey, all of those meanings, where there's, something new happens, new life enters with your arrival.
Oh, I like that. New life enters with your arrival. It's so much. And that's what it is. But, it's when the footsteps come, it is all of a sudden everything that you have leaves. And it's that power, that image takes over, and it gives you a new life. It's very much that. Thank you. Yeah, that was, I know we struggled with I'm not quite sure, but I remember the conversation about using the word connection, such as our deep connection with you. Because I remember Fatima saying that in this connection, there is a longing, there is a romance, there is something, there are multiple things in it, which connection really doesn't quite get it, but we didn't know how to say it. So do you want to speak a little bit to that, Daman?
Yeah, I think that this is another case, perhaps, where we erred on the side of being literal, rather than maybe straying too far to convey kind of multiple meanings. But I think there is a sense of yearning, or a sense of longing, yearning, and even maybe it's also a sense of kind of this bondage that we've talked about, right? Like this bandagi. And arguably deep connection in English doesn't convey the like deep longing and yearning and like sense of surrender that is maybe more equivalent to what the original Persian is suggesting.
Yeah, such is our deep connection with you, that only with your arrival there is exuberance in the world. It's exquisite. It really is. So let's move to the second couplet. In your pathway, I have spread out my eyes and my heart, the only worthy possessions I could offer. Daman, this is just pure, pure love. I just I just melted. And for a lover, what else can they really offer the beloved? They have nothing else except, their heart and the eyes that they long for that vision. And I'm reminded of Soni and Mehiwal, where she pleads to the river, to the fish, don't eat my eyes, because in my eyes resides Mehiwal.
Mm-hmm.
So the eyes are so important, and the heart is just there. For a lover, there's nothing else. There's nothing else they can offer the beloved. Their lover, they love. So, your thoughts?
Yeah, I also love this couplet. There's also a similar line from Farid that I think we've talked about on this podcast, which is similar to the one that you just recounted, where I'm not going to be able to translate it exactly, but it's the image of the crows kind of eating his flesh. And he says, don't, leave my eyes because I, want to see the beloved again. And then there was that line that we talked about at length in a previous podcast also about kind of the smile of the beloved acting as the kind of ointment that soothes the eyes of the men whose hearts carry the divine secrets. I'm not exactly remembering the words, but this imagery that we've seen repeated of the eye, the connection between the eyes and the heart. What exactly is that relationship? I'm reminded also of another poem from Liesl Mueller that I was looking at I came across this week that I'll read, but it's called The Middle Distance, and it's
The middle distance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's, you've retreated behind your eyes to enter your other life, the real one where you are in charge of the characters. Your childhood has been corrected and you're not going to die, and you keep moving towards a figure whose arms stretch out to you. It's always the same figure and the distance remains the same. Which I think is a really beautiful and potentially cynical poem. But back to the present ghazal. Two things that I would say. I think the verb that we have in the original Persian, which we've translated as spread out, is so evocative because it's so there are two words. There's the verb, the farsh kardam, which we've translated as spread out, and then the second notable word is bisat, which we've translated as worthy possessions. But the imagery suggested by both of these words is kind of you're spreading on the floor, spreading around you on the floor everything that you can. Kind of, I'm the image that comes into my mind is like you're kind of in a shop in somewhere in the subcontinent, and you have the guy who's at the shop, taking out all the things and showing you and spreading them on the floor, and everyone's sitting on the ground and you're looking at the shawl or whatever you're buying. This imagery of like abundance, and this imagery also of it's a very intimate image in my mind in terms of I've laid out everything I can for you, and the only things that I can lay out for you are my eyes and my heart. So all of which to say I really love this couplet also.
Yeah. I mean, the first one, I know we're not supposed to look at it as that, but the footsteps have arrived, right? The arrival has happened, and on the pathway, what have I laid out? My eyes and heart. That's it. So let's move to the second one is, in your pathway, I have spread out my eyes and my heart, the only worthy possessions I could offer. So Daman, now the third couplet. Have some compassion for the divine fakirs, so that you may find bliss in this world. Now, of course, Daman, who is the you in here, which I wanted to ask you. But also, we intentionally did not translate fakir, as there's no English word that can truly capture the essence of fakir. And I know we talked a lot about the word choice of bliss, whether it was happiness or what, but, bliss to me is anand, that happiness. It's not happiness. It really is an internal contentment, which is not dependent on anything external. And what the fakirs, for them, they are not going for the happiness. They're going for that inner contentment, that bliss, that serenity, that whatever it is. And that's why I thought bliss was the more appropriate word for this. I know this couplet is open-ended, so go for it. Who is the you here?
I have no idea. I really don't know how to interpret this couplet. I think I want to ask you a question, which is how you would understand and explain fakir, which I would understand as I think in my mind there's like two associations with the word fakir. It's this association of kind of one who is without belongings and also one who is devoted to the divine, right? The divine, so there's this image of, we've had Garib in previous ghazals, this image of kind of being without, material possessions. When I see the word fakir, I'm thinking something similar to this and this idea of devotion. So I guess I would ask, how you would explain the word fakir, and then maybe we can talk about how confusing this couplet is a little bit more.
Right. So for me, fakir, because this is, we've got divine fakir, it's in the cup, so it's very clear. So this is not just an ordinary fakir. These are the ones who've devoted their lives in the pursuit of the divine, so therefore have compassion on them, because they are in your search, they are on your path. That's the way I would interpret fakir.
So you're interpreting the first line as Bhai Nand Lal addressing the divine.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first one was he's bringing our deep connection with you. So he's addressing now again the divine. Have some compassion for the divine fakir, because Bhai Nand Lal is probably associating himself as a fakir.
Yeah.
So that whole open thing, incorporating all the divine lovers, that vastness that comes in. It's not only just about me; it's all of us, all the ones who are on your path. Give us some compassion.
Yeah, so that's okay. So I was interpreting it, and I think I'm wrong. So, but I'll just share with you and with everyone else. So I kind of was trying to interpret it as Bhai Nand Lal referring to the reader, or telling the reader, or asking the reader to have some compassion for the divine's fakir, so that they may find bliss in the world. And that confused me, because I wondered, who are the fakirs then? And who is the reader and who is the fakir? What's the distinction between the reader and the fakir? So I don't understand exactly the second line.
Right. And that's why for me, the second line is, instead of so that you may find bliss in the world, but for me, it was more so that they may find bliss in the world. That to me was a little bit more coherent with what I was thinking. Because that, the compassion for the divine fakirs, why the compassion? So that they may find bliss in the world. Because that's what they're seeking. But, this you just threw me off.
Yeah, and you threw me off. Because so if the verb tense in the Persian is the singular, the second person singular, the implied subject in both of the lines is you, the singular you. So now I'm wondering, is it that, it can't be that he's talking to the divine and saying, so that you, the divine, may find bliss in this world. That can't be it.
Right.
But I think your interpretation of the first line makes a lot more sense in terms of him referring directly and talking directly to the divine in the first line, and then switching the object of switching the audience of the second line in this couplet. I think it might be that that's what's happening.
So how is it in the Farsi? How is it in there? Is it clearer there?
It's not clear to me.
Okay.
But it might. The difference also in the sentence structure is, so the grammatically, and Fatima will have to tell me if I'm wrong, but there's a difference in the grammatical structure of the first and the second lines in this couplet. And we've done it, and in the Persian too, there's the exclamation point after the first line rather, in this couplet. So it is an imperative statement, the first line. It's a, it's the grammatical form one would use if you were saying, go eat or something, right? It is an imperative. It is a command. It's a command directed at someone. And then the second line is in the subjunctive, which would be the tense to express doubt or possibility, etc., etc. So grammatically, there's a slight difference between the two lines, though he is referring to the second person singular in both. So all of which to say, I remain confused about the line, but maybe that helps.
Oh boy. Okay. Help, Daman. Yeah, I just, I was, because it didn't make sense to me. So that you may find bliss in this world.
Right.
So that we, not even we, have compassion, could be we or they. But here it is the divine fakirs he is addressing. He's talking to at least in my thought process, I feel he's having a conversation with the divine. He's asking, have compassion on them. Just give them something, the bliss. That's what they're seeking. But that's going to be open-ended. We're no help to our readers there.
Right. Or, the last question, is he talking to himself?
So if he's talking to himself, how would you have compassion? Himself?
I'm sorry?
So is he telling himself to have compassion for the divine fakirs?
So that he may find bliss in this world.
So that he may find bliss in the world by having compassion for the divine fakirs. Right. So the idea is when compassion enters, you find bliss. That doesn't quite work. Compassion enters. I'm not quite sure about that.
Yeah.
Because bliss is a very different. Compassion is part of bliss, contentment, serenity. They're all parts of it. Bliss is something quite different. So.
But I think so. Not to dwell too long on this one couplet, but I think that, I don't know who he's referring to. I think the other significant thing here is this world, Dar-in dunya. It is specific to this world, not that world or whatever, right? And I think that might be, of course, that's how we've translated it, but drawing attention to that might also be important in terms of trying to make sense of if the divine's figure is somehow of, but not, in, but not of this world or something, right? There seems to be some sort of relationship that's being pointed to between the divine's figure and bliss in this world rather than elsewhere.
Yeah, good. I didn't pick that up, but I can see it now. that this world is important, bliss in this world and not in the world next, hereafter. It's very much that there. And I think that might help me with the fifth one.
Yeah.
Couplet. Good point. So we move to the fourth couplet. Direct your heart towards the divine at all times, so you can cross the bridge of Sirat with ease. Daman, you're going to explain what this bridge is, right? All about to our listeners?
Yes.
Because you're better at that than I am.
So the Bridge of Sirat, I'm not an expert by any means, but as far as I understand it, the Bridge of Sirat is the idea in Islam that one crosses a bridge into paradise. And from what I understand, those who do good deeds or are, again, not an expert, but kind of the righteous, those who are righteous will cross the bridge with ease into paradise, but those who aren't kind of will fall off the bridge into hell, into the depths of hell or whatever. That's my crude understanding of the Bridge of Sirat. I'm curious about how we might interpret this couplet in light of, as the listeners will see, but I've already heard, kind of the image that we see of the world in the last couplet, but also, now that I think of it, in the previous couplet with this idea of how one might find bliss in this world. I
wonder if this Bridge of Sirat is, in Gurbani we have the world ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How do you cross the world ocean with ease? It's basically living in Gurbani. It's living an elevated life, a life where you know your purpose, you are connected, and you are living in that consciousness. So, but it is what I do like is that direct your heart towards the divine at all times. I mean, that to me is Simran. So in Simran, you will cross the world ocean easily. I mean, if I had to translate it and make sense for it for myself, I said, yes, I get that one. But because I also know he's using the terminology of the Sufis for a particular reason, because he's speaking to a particular audience, and this is that genre. So that's fine. But what else would you finding in this ghazal in this share?
Can I diverge from the ghazal and read Puran Singh? That might help us.
Puran Singh always helps us. Puran Singh always raises our consciousness.
So maybe if I read a little bit from Spirit of the Sikh on what Puran Singh has to say about Simran. Simran of some kind no one can escape. If it's not the face of God that one recalls and remembers, it'll be the face of woman, of man, a friend, an object, some desire, ambition, even lust and greed, that man shall have to remember and repeat to himself. Okay, skipping ahead a little bit. Simran is the law of love. It's the holy manifestation of God in the matrix of matter. It's what makes the monotony of repetition of day and night, of love and longing, so fascinating. Simran is the true builder, the slow, silent architect of the soul. Remembrance of him, he's quoting Guru Nanak, is what gives true life. Now, Inni can help us connect this to the couplet.
A rather tall order, I must say, at a short notice.
No, but you see what I think that there, in terms of trying to understand, direct your heart towards the divine at all times, so you can cross the bridge of Sirat with ease.
Yeah, it is. I loved what he said, that someone, that we humans remember. There is that remembrance, but when does that remembrance becomes with a capital R?
Right.
Right. So when it becomes with a capital R, then things change, then the transformation happens, and then that's where you cross the world ocean. That's where you cross this bridge of that. But other than that, remembrance, I always say is love is remembrance. It comes from a place when you remember the one you love. And, it's easy to say, how can you remember the divine, the entity which you haven't seen, haven't experienced all the time? And I'm reading Paigham Singh, and in Rana Surat Singh, the Rani, Rani Rajkaur says, how do I remember? And he says, but you are already, you have your faith. And like you are remembering your husband, like you are longing and remembering, it's that same feeling. So it's very much at a human level first for us to understand that if we do not have that longing and yearning to be with the one we love, we cannot translate that into the feeling for the divine. It has to happen at a level which we can understand, and then we appreciate what that longing is and how there is that joy waiting for that footstep to come, and how that footstep makes all the difference in the world, gives you the life. It is like when you go out on your first date, right? I see a big smile, you dress up, you get ready, there is anticipation, there's excitement, all that you do for that. So that's part of this whole journey of understanding that same excitement, that same getting ready is when you think about spending time with a Shabad or spending time with, whatever it is that you consider as your source. If you can bring that level of excitement, that's what this is about. How do you bring that into our lives?
And I think so, yeah. It's what makes the monotony of repetition of day and night, of love and longing, so fascinating.
Yeah, it is that.
It seems to be
it's a play.
Right.
It's a play. It's a pull and a tug, You long and then you love deeper, that the love becomes into devotion. Then there's a reverence. Then there is that absolute low total surrender. So these are the stages that one, experiences in this love longing play. It's not, that's it. It's just continuous. And the deeper the love, not deeper, the more you love, it uncovers some things much deeper that you don't even know, which are in the subtle mind. You don't even know that they're there, but the love which you are experiencing or is invoking these feelings or is uncovering them. That's what by directing your heart towards the divine at all times does. It is part of it is cleansing, because your mind is now in that motion that other stray thoughts don't enter. So there's that protection that is happening. There is the raising of the consciousness is happening. And then you cross over the world with ease, the world ocean or the bridge, whatever it is, to a place of comfort, to a place of serenity. That's what it is. To me, it is a place of comfort.
And it's this idea that one can cross the bridge of Sirat with ease and, be righteous or whatever through Simran.
Right.
And this kind of active Simran that Bhai Singh is explaining to us, right?
Right. Well, Simran, Simran for us is very active. It's something you do. You don't sit on the mountaintop and just, do it, or you do that. You're very much of this world where your consciousness is attuned and you know your purpose, and the Simran is a part of you. It is that your anchor. It is what stabilizes you. Should we move to the fifth ghazal? Fifth couplet, sorry. This was the one that was challenging for me. So, no one is at ease under the ever-turning sky. So, Goya, just move through this worn, perpetual caravanserai. So, Goya, just move through this worn, perpetual caravanserai. Did I say that correctly, Daman?
I honestly had never heard this word before.
Well, I'd heard the word sarai because my parents used it a lot. So I knew what that meant immediately, the connotations. But honestly, the four of us, Nadhra, Fatima, you and I, spent an hour and a half on this couplet. These two lines. And I don't think, I'm going to share with you what I understood from what Fatima said. She said, in the classical wisdom, sky symbolism or association of the sky I'm just saying those things. Sky is associated with fate. It means, which means it's coming from a higher power, whatever you name that higher power to be. So like when we say it came from the sky, it came from the heavens, it came from somewhere which we don't know, some entity. It's also taqdeer, your destiny. This is what it comes from there. The sky is associated with that. It was your destiny, so I'm looking at it, it's like your destiny, which is constantly changing, which you have no control over, like you have no control over what's happening in the sky. And until the time you're on this earth, this is just the way it's going to be. It's going to be continuously. You're going to be constantly, things are going to be happening, like what's happening in the sky, and there's no escaping it. So this comfort, this sukh, this aram that you're thinking is going to happen under the sky, it's not going to happen. So you better cross this world quickly. This is not the place where we would like to stay for long. This is not the place to engage the heart. So you need to stay here for a short time, like you're staying in a guest house. Now, this was how Fatima explained it, right? And I'm thinking of it as, I'm having trouble with this because this is like my understanding from Gurbani, and I go back to that, because this world is a creation. This is a wonderful place. This is the one place to connect with the one. We are fortunate that we have this human birth to connect with the one, to experience the divinity. And this is the place where you attain freedom and whatever this moksha, whatever it is. And so engage fully in this world and, imbibe in the virtues, and that will change your destiny. So this is like, two very different thoughts. So I was like, okay, what do I make out of it? I'm confused.
So I think that I, with all the respect in the world, disagree with Fatima's interpretation. And I'm going to disagree through Puran Singh, of course.
So you picked Puran Singh.
But I think that
Puran Singh to the rescue. Honestly, that man is just, I'd kiss him if he was here. He is just way too good.
So I think our guiding light.
Yes.
But so, okay. I think because if there's an understanding of Simran, Simran as remembrance, but also as like, as you've described, as like, as connection, as bandagi, right? As reverent bondage, etc. But okay, so if Simran is this idea that this kind of active remembrance that happens through one's life, through one's labors, he has a line else. I think it's Buran Singh has a line elsewhere that at SikhRI has been talked about a lot. I feel like over the years, but the Simran as labor, as this
Right.
not the Simran of the Bhakts who go on the mountain, as we were just discussing, but this kind of active engagement with the world and with the divine. But if it's also like actually that through Simran, through remembrance, through meditating on Nam or whatever, one can enter into the state of bandagi, can long for, but also have fleeting moments of this deep connection. That's very different. That leads me to a very different understanding of this couplet from this idea that there's the sky that represents uncontrollable destiny, and that one is never going to be at ease, which is how we've translated it, but one is never going to be able to figure out or attain this bliss in this world, so kind of get through it and move, there's something awaiting that's better. Forgive me for rambling, but also thank you for allowing me to ramble. But I want to read a bit from Buran Singh, again from the script.
So read it slow, Daman.
Okay, I'll read it slowly.
Because you're going to ask me questions, and so I need to absorb what you're going to read.
Okay, and I'm going to read one thing now and then one thing later. But they're both from the Spirit of the Sikh. This is the section is called "The Master Stands by Me." I wish to hear again a word from those holiest of the holy lips of Guru Arjan Dev himself, as did once my forefathers in the Punjab. I panted for it, I thirsted for it, I cried like a child. I wished to see him, the sweetest minstrel of divine love who lived with us once, and spoke to us with a sweetness that no one has since been capable of bestowing on us. Would he meet me? Where is he gone? Where dwells he now? Messengers robed in white flames came in and took me into a little bright, fragrant, sweet retreat in my own house. There was the treasure of his songs. I fell down speechless at the feet of the song, at the feet of his disciple, who had given me that treasure and also the zest in my soul for its pure light and the feet of the Master. The white-robed messengers lifted me up, and these angels made me sit by the treasure of song. I felt at that entranced, blessed time that I was sitting by the side of the Master himself. The angels sat in me and opened the book of songs, and they read and I listened. I felt Guru Arjan Dev came in response to me as he had blessed my ancestors of the Punjab. So he is still with me. I felt deeply comforted. Now it's difficult for me to read this and not both see the materiality of the description. This isn't pure metaphor. We've talked about Bhai Nand Singh on the podcast in the past, but there is a materiality to the beauty of the language where Buran Singh is like allowing us to glimpse something that he has experienced in a very real, tangible way. So I think I'd like to take that very seriously. But it's hard for me to read this, and especially at the very end, I felt at that entranced blessed time that I was sitting by the side of the Master himself. It's hard for me to read this and not have a different interpretation of this couplet there is this image of the sky that continues to churn, and the metaphor that's suggested in this line we should note for our readers. For the sky is kind of this image of a wheel that turns and turns and turns, and all of us are under the wheel. And he's telling himself, move through this way station, this kind of worn perpetual, which we also could have translated as time worn, or kind of, suggesting something that's old but very much bounded by time. and old in the sense of like a decaying building, perhaps, rather than old in the sense of timeless, as a way in which to think about this world as kind of bounded by time, but also this understanding that there's other conceptions of time, that our understanding of time is limited in this world. And it reads to me less as kind of move through it and, try to get over the bridge or try to cross the world ocean, but rather coming to the understanding of the boundedness of this world, but also the knowledge that the master is always with us. And you can respond. I apologize for talking so much, but there's
no, not at all, not at all. I think for me it was that no one is at ease under the ever-turning sky. I mean, that so no one is at ease. I can understand with the wheel, now that you've explained the wheel is constantly turning, and we are in this turning, which is happening constantly. But and that's where it, with the previous shares, this one was like, where is this fitting in? Because we're talking about this deep connection in the first one. Then we're talking about on your pathway, I have showered my eyes and my heart, and then have compassion on these fakirs. And then the next one is direct your heart towards the divine, because that'll help you cross, the world ocean, this bridge. And then we come to like the drop dead moment. No one is ever at ease under the ever turning sky. So let's just do this really quickly and get out of this world. And that's not the way I understand things.
Right.
So I'm at a loss here, really, because that does not speak to me at all.
Well,
Any way I slice it, it just doesn't move me.
I wonder also if it's kind of I wonder if part of the difficulty with interpretation is also a translation thing, because I don't think that there's a suggestion in this puzzle, and again, this is something that I'd be curious to hear Fatima's thoughts on, but I don't think that there's a sense in the couplet of kind of moving through something quickly, or like passing through, or I don't think there's a sense of passing through. I think there's more of a sense of traveling. If a way station is somewhere that travelers rest, that's a different connotation from perhaps slightly different from like moving through something. The idea of traveling through something, and the world as being a place of temporary rest, but also a place where you're not at ease. But that to me is like, okay, so it's a place where I'm resting while on my travels, but no one is at ease in this world. So that is like a contradiction, but is that the contradiction that he's like trying to figure out, or that he's pointing to? Is that there is this sense of like, this is a place that one travels through, and is, if we extend that metaphor, then it's, it's on the route towards something else. But that's not, as a place of rest, that's not necessarily that you're like on the highway and passing the exits, but is actually like an exit you take for a reason, for rest. Apologies for like killing that metaphor. But if I may also read my last Puran Singh quote of the day.
Well, someone has been immersed in Puran Singh this week. I can see that.
yeah, like reads one book once and only talks about one book is me. But if I may read one section from Puran Singh, I will read it slowly again. So this is the section on Van Shakna in Spirit of the Sikh, which you might translate as, sharing what one has. So I'll read the beginning, and it kind of reads as so I'll read bits of it, but the very beginning of the section is to share our bread and joy and attainments of God realization with all, to give a feast of our flesh and blood, to be Christ's, Buddha's, Guru's, not men only, above humanity, living outside our bodies, in touch with superhumanity of the higher worlds. Okay, I'm going to read the first sentence of the next paragraph, which starts, the sermon of political economy is expression of estrangement of man from man, systematized, justified, and perpetuated. There's no political economy in the kingdom of love. The father of the family strives to feed his children. In love, it is to seek no kingdom for itself. It is to confer kingdoms on the poorest. It's to rob no one. Robbing others is what constitutes the art of empire founding. Conserving wealth for oneself is to make many die of hunger. Okay. I'm skipping ahead a little bit. Bequeath to your children the kingdom of freedom and its rapture only, not the sickness of the sense of property. The best law is of love. The best service is of labor in love. The best thought is the emancipation of man. The best justice from man to man is unselfishness. The best manners are incessant giving of the self away, and incessant forgiving. The best ethics is melting away into love of ideal beauty. Your surplus belongs to anyone who may need it. Which, is relevant in as Sikhs, where so many wealthy Sikhs hoard their wealth. But moving on, true union is in feeling, in the soul, neither in the mind nor in the body. And here's why I'm reading all of this. The world is an inn on the road of perfection. Knowledge is not so covetable a property for a true man as a flame in his heart which might consume the dross of his self. That word dross I had to look up, but it suggests like waste.
So read that the second last line. It is a perfection world. What did he say?
The world is an inn on the road of perfection. Knowledge is not so covetable a property for a true man as a flame in his heart which might consume the dross of his self. The next line I'll read, but maybe we won't talk about it. But all friendships take place here in one little point where our souls touch and come in contact with each other. Do not try to embrace the whole circumference. That one shining point is of great reality of things. But the end line, of course, reminded me of this couplet. And I think it's interesting that he has this image of the world as this inn, which again, I think is like very similar. And I wonder if like he's also, consciously alluding to this ghazal. But this idea that the image of the inn, the world is like temporary way station, comes in a section about this very material act of sharing one's I think it's actually not sharing one's belongings, but actually not hoarding one's belongings, which is, I think, maybe slightly different. But this image coming in this section where you have this very kind of material meditation on the nature of wealth and the nature of what one ought to do with that wealth, which is not keep it. And then this image of the inn, so I'm trying to work with all of these to try to understand this couplet, but yeah, maybe
we need a date with Bhai Nand. That's what we need. Daman, can you just arrange that, please?
Can I ask him? I'll ask him.
Because we could go circles of it, and at the end of the day, I don't know what that means. I mean, it's lovely to thank you for reading Puran Singh. He's always wonderful. But honestly, that this couplet really stumped me.
Mhm.
And I've reached out to a couple of my friends who are fluent in Farsi. I haven't heard back from them I told them I need an hour of your time because I think just this one is going to take them that much time. And if whatever I find, Daman, I mean, whenever I find it, we'll talk about it in any other podcast, but I'll definitely share it with you.
Mhm.
So it's been quite the podcast. We had Bhai Singh, Pitaji, and we had Puran Singh, both the men who are in my consciousness, both just absolutely amazing human beings whose words still have the power to touch us and move us and get us to think and broaden our horizons. So have they truly left? And the answer is no. They're very much here. So that's timelessness, right? That's a call that they've gone, but their words stay on. They're just as important. They're stretching our minds, broadening us, making us vast, making us think, and making us fall in love with them all over again. Any closing thoughts, Daman?
No, but I would I look forward to listeners engaging and agreeing or disagreeing with us and having their own interpretations. I think this might be the most I don't know. I think I've said this in the past, but I think this was, definitely one of the more challenging of the ghazals. And as we've said every week, the translations are very much kind of an image of an interpretation at a certain moment, and they're not always 100% there, or the original is just so textured that it's impossible to be 100% there, maybe is more what it is.
Right. It's so layered, and there's such depth in the original and such multiple meanings. It's hard to bring that in. But I would say this is for this time, for what our understanding is. This is it. And who knows, we'll talk to 10 other people who are immersed in this literature, and it will change. But that's the beauty of it. It's ever changing, and we are growing. There's nothing like it. We're not stagnant. And that's life. If you stop growing, you die.
The ever-turning sky.
Yes, the ever-turning sky. We shall take that, and we will. With that, I will say this was wonderful, Daman, once again. But my favorite one is "In Your Pathway."
Mm-hmm.
I have spread out my eyes and my heart, the only worthy possessions I could offer. To my love, that's what I have spread. Now, whether he accepts them or not, it's not something that I have any control about. I have just done what I needed to do, whether he accepts. And even if he doesn't, that's okay, because that's the journey. Whatever the beloved does is fine with the lover. So on that thought, thank you for this wonderful podcast.
Yes,
thank you for Puran Singh. Thank you for raising my consciousness. And thank you to our listeners for bearing with us. And honestly, you get snippets of all what's happening. Some things which we don't even know we're going to say, it comes out. So thank you for that and being kind to us. Your emails mean a lot, and you are so generous. Thank you. All right. So Guru Fateh, everyone.
You are listening to SikhCast by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.